Tonight's webinar is about motivating students in PE. We know it's a very popular topic and one that folks want to talk about probably now more than ever, coming out of COVID or being in the middle of COVID, however you want to talk about it. But we know just how challenging motivating students in the subject of physical education can be. So I'm joined tonight by Molly Collins, who will introduce herself in a second. My name is Doug Curtin. I'm the director of content here at Platform. Platform's an educational fitness program, if you're not familiar with it, that partners with over 1,500 schools across the country. As part of our services, we always like to host these free webinars so that we can open up conversations that are relevant and important to the topic and of physical education. So with that, we'll go ahead and kick off before we dive into the meat and potatoes of motivating students in PE. Molly, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself, it's always helpful to get to know who we're speaking with.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Molly Collins. I am a PE teacher at Pennfield High School in Battle Creek, Michigan. I am originally from northern Michigan, Holton Lake. So I absolutely love Michigan, love everything, even the four seasons. I currently just graduated with my master's in applied exercise science with a focus in strength and conditioning. I stay traditionally on more of the strength and conditioning side of the phys ed department. Next year, we'll be venturing a little bit more into my minor, which is health. And I love using Platform. This is now, year 3, maybe, I think it is. And I just love what Platform has to do in terms of not only my classroom, but professionally, and helping to network with like-minded individuals like yourself. If you've seen any of my other podcasts or webinars, I've talked a lot about my teaching philosophy and my life philosophy in general, and that being the 3 Ps, and that is purpose, passion, and pride. And I really try to instill that within every lesson, with every conversation I have with my students. And it really gets into the meat and potatoes of what motivating students is all about. And I do want to just put this out there, as Doug mentioned, I am not a master in this whatsoever. So please do not take this as like, oh, she thinks she knows everything, because man, they throw you curveballs every second they can get. Today was one of them. So these are just some of the tips and tricks I try. And sometimes I fall on my face. Other times it goes great. So I'm sure you guys will have things that you're like, oh yeah, I do that. But please, if you have any sort of suggestions as well, I want to hear them too, and I want to try them out. So if you know of anything that you're like, it worked in my classroom, please, please, please put it in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Molly said, a lot of these webinars, we do kind of try to address and touch on really specific topics like fitness, yoga, weightlifting. And one that we've heard a lot from PE teachers being interested about is around motivation. And Molly has been brave enough to stick her hat in the ring and offer up some suggestions. But we know anybody that's been in a physical education classroom, there is no magic solution. And it's often why we do have these conversations. So just to set the stage a little bit, we'll talk a little bit about what that challenge looks like for those that are in the classroom. They know it feels, in different ways, what it looks like when you're having trouble motivating students. We'll then break down some of those tips and tricks and hopefully think about some creative ways that we can start to engage more and more students within the classroom, talk about trying some new things, and send everybody on their way. But before we do, Platform recently conducted a national survey. And I think something that stood out to us is we had a whole laundry list of different things when we asked, what is the biggest pain point in your day-to-day as a PE teacher? And of the over 529 PE teachers that were surveyed nationwide, over 50% chose engaging and motivating students. And again, there was a list about 10 different options that PE teachers could choose from, and over 50%, so upwards of 250 so PE teachers from across the country said engaging and motivating students was their biggest challenge. So that stands out in a big way for us here at Platform. And that's why we want to have conversations like this with PE teachers like Molly. So Molly, when we talk about lack of motivation or what we see within the classroom, what are some of the things that you run into when it comes to some of those students that might not be super engaged or motivated within your classroom?
I think one of the first and foremost ones is students not wanting to change. And I'm sure that this kind of goes hand in hand in many of the other classrooms here of the teachers. Either we have students that might not have active wear. Maybe they come from a home where they just don't have that or don't have access to clean laundry, to where if they did work out maybe in clothes one day, maybe they don't have clean clothes. I run into that a lot. I work in a pretty low income school district, so that's very common. Second one is especially my students who are younger, my freshmen and sophomores, they do not want to change in general because they feel uncomfortable in the locker rooms. Whatever it may be, the locker rooms, you know, it's hard for me as a female teacher. I obviously can't kind of look over the male locker room because I'm not allowed in there. And so you don't know what exactly is happening in that locker room, why they may feel uncomfortable, or it just might be they're not comfortable with their bodies quite yet. So in regards to changing, that's number one. Number two is they just maybe don't know what's going on. They don't feel as comfortable, so they don't really want to participate. They don't want to sweat. I get this one from not only females, that's usually pretty common too, but I get it more from the males. I don't want to sweat, which I think is baffling. I don't feel as if I get a good workout if I don't sweat sometimes. So that's tough. And then you're trying to teach on top of that the hygiene aspect if they're not changing. And then the last one is they're tired. Maybe we have a student who after school, they went to work, they worked till 11 o'clock at night, they got back from work, they attempted to do their homework, or they had to babysit their siblings, and now they're up in the morning the next day redoing it all over again. So they're tired, they're just not motivated in general to really do anything in any of their classes. So not to take it personally is one of my biggest takeaways. It's not necessarily something that you're doing. There's a deeper root to the problem, which is kind of going into one of the biggest things that I wanted to talk about was the relationship piece within the classes that is super important. So not dressing, just the overall tiredness, and then maybe they feel uncomfortable just being in a phys ed classroom and not wanting to do something would be my top three for lack of motivation.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of those will then lead to, students maybe feeling like they, aren't going to participate fully, or they even size up an activity and say, oh, not for me, or I'm not going to participate. So there are, again, a lot of different ways that we can start to work and navigate with students. And there's certainly not going to be one individual tip or trick that's going to like nail it on the head with every single kid. But what we're going to break down over these next 8 things, like you talked about, starts to build up some of the relationship aspects from teacher to student that you found to be successful, but also ways in which you can start to build relationships with students so they're not so intimidated or scared to, be in a vulnerable situation with one another. So I think that kind of is a really good setup for what we're going to talk about in some of those others. As you mentioned, a lot of this is guided by just building those relationships and kind of weaving that throughout your class. So as we do break these down, these weren't in any too particular order, but we will dive in with number 1, which is about music choice. And obviously, hopefully some schools can have access to maybe a speaker or something that they have, access to close by when it comes to music. But outside of just playing music, Molly, you've found that actually letting students make a little choice within that can go a really long way. So talk us through what music choice means when it comes to kind of engaging and motivating students to be a little bit more, actively participating.
Yes, and I can only see Doug's face right now, but I can picture what other people's faces are when you're like, you allow your students to pick playlists. Yes, I do. And yes, it is challenging. They do have rules and stipulations that they have to stick to. Obviously, if there is an E by that song for explicit, I'm not going to be playing that song. I would like to keep my job. So, but giving them the opportunity and the choice to pick the music. A lot of times I'll ask students, hey, what are we feeling today? And, I'll get classic rock, or I'll get I don't even know some of the rappers' names nowadays, Little Boozy or Little Baby or something. I don't know. You could say little and add any adjective you want, but they want to hear that. It's what they listen to on the daily basis. If I'm able to play it within my classroom, I've also found that it reduces the amount of students who want to have their AirPods in or other headphones, which I don't necessarily enjoy them having them, because then it becomes sometimes a safety issue that they can't hear me or they can't hear what's around them. So if I'm playing music that they enjoy, they're not needing that additional music in their ears to help motivate them. So one of the very first assignments I do within the class at the beginning of each semester is having them choose a playlist. And I said, make it as random as you want. And then what I'll do is that it's kind of like a Russian roulette. I just pick a playlist each day that is on, and I use Spotify. So the students who have a Spotify account, if they don't have a Spotify account, they'll just send me songs and then I'll add them to one that I've created. But then that way, I said, you can't complain. The rule is you can't complain about the music if you didn't make a playlist. So that's another one. I'll have some kids be like, oh, this song is trash. And I'm like, well, did you make a playlist? And they're like, no. And I said, shut it down. So it's a way that we all joke around with them as well. But everyone has different music tastes. So being able to play multiple different kinds of music throughout the hour also just helps to motivate one particular student at a time. So I love this. As we all know, kind of matching the vibe. If you have a very energetic classroom through the music that you're playing, it's just going to help boost that morale and boost that energy within the classroom. And that's what you want. You want them leaving your classroom happy and enjoyed with the time that you spent with them. So yes, I do allow them to make playlists, like I said, appropriate. Every now and then they try and slip the song in there on me, but as soon as I hear it, I try and exit it out of the playlist. So
sure. Yep. And I know that there will be a few people that are a little worried about that in terms of just closing your eyes and letting people play. But I think the playlist idea goes a long way, or just like you said, hey, it's use it or lose it. Like, let's make sure we're responsible with this. And again, start to build up those conversations and connections like, oh, you like that song too? Like, and then there's that bridge and that gap. So speaking of energy, you talked about kind of pumping the energy up in the room and starting to like get people, connected and not closed off with headphones or anything else like that. The next one sort of works a little bit, in the same vein, in that a lot of times you'll take workouts and create them into a partner workout so that students are working together. So if I click on this, it might take us out, but Molly, I'll let you kind of start explaining this one and see if I can potentially get this over here.
Yeah, so this particular video is being explained. This was a platform finisher. And once a week, I do partner workouts. So whether that be straight partners, so just pairs, or teams of 4. And these or teams of 3 or 4. And students then have to participate together and challenge within it. So they're staying within a platform workout. I will just modify it. So as you can see right here, they're doing sit-ups, which was part of that Rocky finisher, but they're doing them together. And it's kind of either like a you go, I go, or paired such as that. When you have someone to work out with, you tend to want to work harder and you have someone holding you accountable, myself included. When I work out by myself, it gets a little bit more difficult. Whereas if I'm working out with my workout partner that I do twice a week, I'm much more motivated and want to stay and work hard for him as well. So I love making partner workouts. And like I said, we usually do, and I'll get into this a little bit more, but my week's set up to where we usually will do like a game day, a partner workout, and then they'll do their 2 to 3 lifting days on their own. And that game day is special, which gets into my next slide here. So I don't do it necessarily every week, but I try to if the students are fulfilling what they're supposed to do. So they're lifting on their own 3 days a week, a partner workout, and then they're going to do a mastering mobility at the end of the week. And this game day, because they don't get it very often, what's going to happen is they're going to get excited for it. And it's like a glimpse. Something I learned a long time ago was stop it when it's still fun. So stop a game when it's still fun. So maybe you're playing like this medicine ball tic-tac-toe. If you guys haven't ever played that, it's a lot of fun. They're moving, but they're playing just a very kids game. When they're still yelling and hollering and getting excited, I usually will stop the game because then they're going to want to continue that game another day. Whereas if I let it go too long, well, I'm like, that game's so boring, Miss Collins, the next time we try to play it. So stop games when they're fun. And another one that I know I run into a lot, say when we play floor hockey, stop when it gets a little too intense in terms of that fight might be on the break of happening, but we got to tone it back a little bit because they do get competitive, which I love. But I obviously don't want anyone getting hurt, and I need that classroom management to be in top notch. So I do love doing a game day, but I like doing it as like a surprise or as a reward for them doing what they're supposed to do that week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that we often try to do is like, all right, a lot of schools have worked to say, hey, we're going to shift from a games-based model to a fitness-based model, or, you know, we're going to try to go all in on fitness for this unit or this semester. And with that, we can sort of lose a group of kids that might always have looked forward to physical education for some of those different games. And it's the same thing, right? Like we've gotten a new group of students engaged by doing yoga or fitness or weightlifting or, you know, stretching or mobility, but we, again, can sort of balance out those different groups, knowing that different things are going to spark students' interest and get them excited to look forward to it and know, hey, I have to continue to sort of put in the work so that maybe that next game day might be able to come up in the next couple of weeks or whatever it else may be.
Yeah, and also too, especially with the games, like I'm just looking at the examples that I include here. The medicine ball tic-tac-toe is easily something that you could use as a warm-up game where you're getting their heart rate going. You're only doing it for 5-10 minutes. You're doing the running, you're doing the lifting, you're getting that camaraderie to where then you're stopping that game when it's still fun and now they're proceeding into their workout. Whereas something like basketball, maybe instead of, and I'm using platform as an example, when a lot of times we have like maybe a 5 to 10 minute finisher that is cardio, it has a little bit more cardio involved within it. Well, maybe you stop that, and instead of doing what's prescribed on platform, maybe you go and you do a game of basketball.
Sure.
And something like that, to where you're mixing it up even within your particular lifting day, just to give something a little different. And we all know that time restraints and opportunities within a gym are super important. I have 1 hour at all the whole day that I could use the gym. Otherwise, I have to use a wrestling room and a weight room. So sometimes my second hour gets to use the gym a little bit more than the rest of the hours. So knowing what you have and that sort of thing in your schedule is going to be super important.
Sure. And knowing your group, just knowing, understanding, hey, this group might, be better for one group versus another or whatever else may be. I see a few questions coming in, but we're just going to hold off till the end to answer those. If that's okay with everybody, we'll pause and just kind of continue through the tips, and then we'll circle back. A big one, I think, that stands out a lot, Molly, and you do it, I think, both in person in class that I want you to talk about, and then also on social media, is highlighting your students. And I think that's a big one that we know and we understand and we think about in terms of, all right, when a student feels recognized, they're more involved, they're more engaged, they're more motivated. And often in physical education, or sometimes, the most athletic student, or the student that, typically is the best at this or the fastest or the strongest, might have typically gotten highlighted in the past, but you're sort of shifting the approach in terms of how you highlight students and the way that you kind of shout out in different ways your different types of students. So talk us through some of the different ways that you do that throughout the day.
Yes. So starting off, like, first of all, in person, right? So, and actually this wonderful smiley boy in this picture, I was talking with him after school about this. And he was like, I just love when you make a comment in class, Ms. Collins, that says well, I know JoJo's been working out. He's been working hard. He goes, that just makes me feel so good. And it was something so simple. Like, I just made a blanket comment while I was yelling in the weight room, I know JoJo's been working. And it just made him feel so good that he's like, I just never want to disappoint you. And that's great. I love that. But not every student's going to have that intrinsic motivation to just want to do good for others. So if you're able to highlight a student, you see them doing something well within that particular workout or within that particular game, you notice that, hey, this student is a really good setter in volleyball. Well, then maybe have them demo that movement when you go to do it, or this person has a really great squat. I'm going to have them demo the squat while I'm helping kind of teach through these cues. So using the students to help you kind of navigate through your lesson plans is really, really great. Plus, talking about the warm-up leader, if you have a student who's leading the class, it's going to do a couple of things. It's going to give them that little boost of confidence, like, oh, she trusts me to do this. Second of all, they're in charge essentially now. So it puts this little cap in their, or feather in their cap, right? Like, I am somebody. But then also too, they're going to get a glimpse of what it's like to run a class too. And maybe give it a little bit more like, oh man, that's what she goes through, or whatever it may be, you know, like we understand it's not always easy. And then just meeting them on their level with social media. I know not everyone is a big fan of social media. I really try to use it to my advantage, not only to meet the students at their level and what they see every single day, but also to highlight what's going on in my classroom, to be an advocate for physical education. And hey, this is important. This is what the students are actually doing in my class and not what you think they're doing in my phys ed class, which I think is super important. And let's be real, parents who are on social media, they love seeing their kids highlighted. So then when the parent sees it, they're going to share it. And then now all their friends are seeing it. And so maybe it just sparks a conversation within their household to be like, hey, what did you do in class today? And that's what it's all about. We want advocacy. We want students to be highlighted and be, I know how great it feels when Doug shoots me a text and is like, hey, this went really well. Great, thank you. Like, I appreciate you saying that. And so you want to do well for the people who highlight you and who actually praise you. So giving your students praise is probably number one thing you should be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think within physical education, or, you know, a lot of times it gets tagged to athletics as well. It becomes like, and not to disparage athletics in any way. We think that's great. We serve that group as well. But, you know, check out so-and-so who maxed out today. And that's often like the big kind of like shining, glimmering, check out how much someone squatted or power cleaned or bench pressed. But, you know, we won't play this example, but you have an example over here on the right. That's a great video that is all the different ways that students are modifying push-ups. So it's not like maybe the most exciting thing, but it's a great way that, hey, here's what the kids have learned. We're going to highlight that and give them a chance to showcase those different things on social media. I think goes a long way. Like you mentioned with the squat earlier, in terms of demoing in class, there's a lot of different ways that you can start to sort of pick apart and pull out different students that might not always feel like, all right, I'm, you know, leading this or getting the acknowledgement. So I think that's fantastic. And I think that's a big one. You mentioned intrinsic.
Do you mind if I say something kind of off of that?
Yeah, sure.
So in terms of like that particular video with the push-ups, I think that also too leads into giving your students a little bit of a choice. And this can get out of hand very easily, but also too, in particular to my classroom, say if there is a push-up movement that they need to be doing, well, giving them the choice to make it harder or easier within what their means is going to be super important. If I just say, hey, we're doing push-ups, and say there's a particular student who struggles with push-ups, well, if I just say, well, you're doing push-ups, that's all you're going to do, and not give them other options and demo what they are, right, they're going to feel intimidated. They're not going to want to do that particular movement in any capacity.
Right.
But
that's a quick way to unmotivate and become disengaged. I think that's a great point, is this and a lot of other examples is a way to make it accessible for students so that it's not like that quick shutdown. But hey, here are the options. There's a lot of different ways we can all do this together. We don't all have to do the push up or this or that in terms of a movement.
Yeah, and that's just it's gonna help them. It's gonna help them when they go to the Y with their friends and be like, oh, well, that's okay. Well, do it inclined or grab a resistance band and also do it with that to make it a little bit harder. So just being able to give them that choice is super important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, a perfect segue into talking about some of the different ways that they can start to see their own progress and start to, like, as you mentioned, some of that intrinsic motivation is great, but sometimes students need to see sort of that kind of like proof in the pudding. Because as we know, fitness, wellness, you don't typically get immediate results. You don't typically get instant feedback and, hey, I've been working out for a few weeks, I'm not seeing a ton. Talk us through some of the things that you've done with platform and some of the data opportunities there that kids can see some of the progress they're making kind of week over week.
Yeah, so I absolutely love the data piece that platform provides. I know probably many of you are familiar with FitnessGram and those types of tests. And it just got to be a lot of tediousness. How do I enter this data? And now I'm able to do very similar tests to FitnessGram that I would have done, but now the students are entering their own data. There's thousands of testing scenarios that I could do. And we're doing almost twice a month, we're doing these different types of fitness tests. And the students now we're a few months away from the end of the school year, and they have multiple data points to where they can see on their graph if they go into the 1 minute air squat fitness test. They do air squats almost every single day. When they test them, it's 1 minute, it's quick, boom, it's part of their warm up usually. And then they're entering in that data. They can be like, oh man, I missed it by 1, or man, I really went down on that one. And they can see it, it's instant. It gives them a visual within their graph. And that's one of the best things that we can have as a teacher, is that it's that instant feedback that they need. And I think being able to visually see a graph and see how they've gone either up or down or whatever it may be, that's super motivating. And I'm talking about it in terms of fitness tests, but you can do leaderboards as well. And actually, if any of you are members of Platform, you'll notice that Jackie sent out a video today talking about how to print out and post the leaderboards, which is a huge motivational factor for my students to be able to see where they add up in terms of strength, maybe within the school, as well as nationwide for any school that uses Platform, but then also maybe the mile run. And it's a way to hold each other accountable and to be like, you didn't really run the mile in 6 minutes and 30 seconds. Well, yeah, I did. And then it kind of gets this competitiveness going. Sure. Which is what I want. I want competition in my classroom. I think it's healthy. It's great for discipline. So I like to be able to see those leaderboards, and I like to be able to post them as well in my classroom.
Sure. And I think that's one that's, again, a much more nuanced know your group. And I think, you know your group, and that leaderboards can be super impactful and have them tap in. And then in the same vein, there are certain students that's going to maybe turn off or turn away, and the ability for them to know, all right, I'm not on the leaderboard, or I don't want to be interested in leaderboards. But again, then instead of seeing, all right, I'm, often other apps and things that will say you're in the 25th percentile. Well, I'm in the 25th percentile of like my whole country. That doesn't tell me a lot about my improvement. But if it tells me I made 25% progress over the semester in my squat, like you mentioned, or in my mile, then that might be a little bit more impactful of capturing another group. So again, it's all about understanding how the data is going to impact your group of students. And I think that's an important thing that you touched on, Molly, is that your group of students, you kind of can juggle that twofold. Your group likes the leaderboards, your group likes that personal progress, and you can kind of mix and match that based off of your student population, where another group can do something completely different. And I think that's important to understand, is that it's not cut and dry. Everybody has to use data the same way. It's that kind of flexibility within the system itself.
Yeah, and it's going off of too, like your yearly goals, what's important for you too, and what your student body is needing. Maybe your student body really wants to focus on upper body strength even, and you're like, we've really been struggling as a school to get down push-ups and get them down correctly. Well, maybe you just have a focus of one particular test or whatever it may be.
Sure.
But also another thing that Platform allows is, and I won't go too much into depth, but is something called working sets, to where my students are constantly testing their max, which then if they see at the end of a working set, congratulations, we've just bumped your max 5 pounds, they're usually geeked at that end of the hour, because they see their max just went up. And then the following week, they're doing more weight within a particular lift to hopefully get them a little bit stronger, which is obviously that goal. You see those maxes go up for, I mean, I'm not a big max person, but those kids who, especially I look at my football players, they are usually jacked about it. So again, it's what Doug's talking about, knowing your population and explaining to them what that means with the numbers as to if your max goes up or your max goes down.
Sure. Absolutely. Fantastic. Moving on from that, the next one, which I think, we all, again, can use in different ways. You've found ways to tap into this in terms of some of the different things that allow you to get, performance rewards and motivating students in this way is thinking about what you can have access to. So I know extra credit is one that you've used in the past, Molly, as well as some different things that you kind of give out in terms of, hey, if you're doing a good job, or different incentives in terms of, a free t-shirt or a hoodie or a backpack or any of those different types of things to sort of, again, this is probably a little bit more on that extrinsic side of awards and rewards, but talk us through this one.
Well, and to be 100% honest, I can only speak for my situation, but I have more extrinsic motivated students than intrinsic. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where a lot of us are at, which is probably why we're tuning into this particular webinar, right? And so you have to have ways that students are going to kind of get the sips of the Kool-Aid to where they become more intrinsically motivated. Yeah. And these are some of the ways that I do it. So extra credit. Students most times are going to somehow lose points throughout the week, whether they're not changing, whether their effort was not subpar in any way. Maybe they missed a day, whatever it may be. However you grade, maybe they are losing out on some points. Extra credit's a great way. I choose to do it a few different ways. One way is when we're doing those partner workouts, I'll add a competition piece to it to be like, hey, the top 3 teams get extra credit points. And now they're a little bit more, who am I going to pick as my partner if they really want to get this extra credit points? Maybe some of them are like, whatever, I don't really care. But you're just adding to that competition piece. The second way I do it is I want to obviously encourage people to be moving more. So I will say, hey, if you guys do a mastering mobility on platform and record it, I'll give you extra credit. Or if you do a fitness test on platform, I'll give you extra credit. Maybe it's some sort of extra workout. Usually Fitness Anywhere is always open so that students at any time can get into a workout if they want. So I want to reward them for doing physical activity outside of my class when needed. The second thing is donations. And I don't know if you guys have worked with your military very often. I am a huge fan of the military and getting them into my classroom as much as possible. I actually just had the Navy Special Operations in my classroom today, putting my students through a workout. And they came, I'm not kidding, with multiple things to give away, from t-shirts to hats to pens to pencils to lanyards to stickers. And they want to give things out because that's like obviously a huge marketing thing for them. Other things are getting involved within your community. Maybe, say, for example, the free t-shirt aspect, you have a business that wants to sponsor these t-shirts. And now they're getting advertised on the back of your shirt while you have something on the front of your shirt. Sure. A lot of times I know we have grocery stores in town or just local daycares or anything like that. They want to give back. And a lot of times we don't think that people will, so we don't ask. And I live by the philosophy of, well, either they can say yes or no. Sure. So I might as well try it. So being willing to kind of step out. There's grants as well, which is actually what I worked on today. Was I talked about getting a grant for our free t-shirts for next year, so that it's not coming out of any sort of budget, but giving a shirt out to a kid who maybe is a performer of the week or the platform student of the month, or maybe you have like 1,000-pound club where you have your main lift, and if students reach 1,000 pounds, then they get this free shirt, or whatever it may be. You can set any sort of standard you want. My shirt's going to have my P3 logo on it with a phrase on the back, and that's going to be their kind of motivational piece. And yeah, I think providing them with something that they can show off your program or things you're doing within your program, like say military stuff. I mean, it's a win-win for everyone.
No, and I think to your point of, my population is more inclined by extrinsic motivation. I think everyone's lofty goal is to have students become intrinsically motivated and be inspired to work out on their own. And I think while that's really great theoretically, as we all strive to do here at Platform 2, even some of the most popular apps and different things that adults use, whether it's an Apple Watch giving daily trophies out, or Peloton giving you awards throughout your week, or all these different things that, even adults do, are semi-extrinsic motivation. It's not like they're totally inspired because it feels good and I want to work out every day. We all kind of get that needle moved a little bit by some of that extrinsic motivation. So using it to your advantage through some of these things can go a really long way. Just being mindful of time, Molly, we have about 2 more that we're going to cover between social media, which you already tapped into a little bit. And then we have 1 more after that. So we'll go quickly through this one, but I think this is important. I know as you mentioned earlier, sometimes we try to stray away from social media and some of the things that come from it, but it's part of students' lives. And instead of avoiding it, you found a way to kind of connect it. And again, engage students so that they know, hey, we're working with you. We understand what you're seeing. We want this to be relevant to you. So talk us through what you've done in terms of some of the different things that kids will come in and saying, hey, Ms. Collins, I saw this on social media. Can we talk about it?
Yeah. So I know I'm younger, so I do use social media. So I understand if it's foreign to some people, but meeting them on their level. And one of my students came in one day. He's like, Ms. Collins, have you ever heard of this? And it was called like slapback. Michigan State Wrestling was doing it on a TikTok. And I was like, no, but let's try it. And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah, let's go. So he helped me explain the rules, and it gave him, like I said, that little bit of leadership role. And we played the game as a warm-up and thoroughly enjoyed it. He felt as if I heard him, which I did. And then the other thing, we also did an exam. My upper level class has a fun exam for semester 1. They had to create a TikTok, and that TikTok to be a fitness challenge, as you're going to see on the screen here. It could be fun. So like I had a couple kids do push-ups around the school, and they went to different areas of the school and kind of made it humorous. I had some people do, as you saw, the modifications of different types of push-ups. I had some people do nutrition stuff. So from hydration, why is it so important, and kind of give like as you may have seen on TikTok, like the whole doom, doom, doom thing. So just like I said, meeting them on their level and be like, hey, you're using it. Let's teach you how to properly use it in something that is positive.
Right. And then again, instead of just kind of washing it away, that kids are going to tap into it no matter what, have them be able to also learn how to like navigate the good and the bad, and what's right and what's wrong with on some of those things, which is fantastic. And then the last one for tonight, in terms of different tips and tricks, we left this one for last because we know it might not be an option for everybody, but when you can take advantage of it, Molly, you found that even just kind of breaking down that wall and working out with your students, or kind of taking part of the action, can go a really long way.
Yeah, I love working out with my classes. I think it gives me the opportunity to get that one-on-one time, to get to know them a little bit, ask them about their day, how their game go last night, or whatever it may be. But then they're also kind of given that opportunity to get one-on-one coaching, which they may not understand that they want or need, but then once they get it, they continuously want it. Plus, it's fun for me to let them see exactly that, hey, I'm going to do the same exact workout you guys are doing.
Right.
And it just brings you down to that relationship piece level. This fun picture that you see right now, I had a student challenge me to a one-on-one basketball game. And I was like, bring it, let's go. So I didn't realize how big this was going to get, but it was a kid that had been talking about it for 4 years, and I finally said yes. And I mean, we had classes coming down to the gym to watch this one-on-one game, and the kids loved it. And talking about the social media piece, they filmed it, they made edits, they had these videos of me pretending to get my ankles broken all over social media. And it was just a fun, positive thing that I hope that they remember. So if I can have a kid say like, oh, Miss Collins used to work out with me, I'm 100% okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even at my own expense, sometimes I'm cool with it.
Sure. And I think one of the things that stands out when you go on to like PE Central as a Facebook group or anything else like that, are the messages that people get in terms of, I took your class 10 years ago and I still remember X, Y, and Z. And I think that has an impact within physical education far past a few different subjects. It comes with its challenges of getting students, like you said, to dress out, be afraid, and be open to sweat and do all the different things that you said at the beginning of it. But it can come by building some connections and building kind of the different relationships, so that it's not this thing where it's like, oh, my PE teacher is making me do X, Y, and Z, and I don't want to do it. It becomes, we've built up these relationships. I understand some of the expectations. I'm starting to feel more involved, more engaged, whether it's because of the music or because of the highlights or the shout outs or the awards or some of the things I'm seeing on my app, all the different ways that kind of slowly will build those different relationships along the way. So we've touched on it a lot already, Molly. You talked about kind of knowing your group of students and what's going to tick with them. Obviously, each group is a little bit different. You talked about trying new things and sometimes falling flat, and sometimes it works and it's awesome. And then I think the big thing, as we've talked about a little bit, is, not everybody's going to love PE as much as you do as a PE teacher, but finding things that they might be able to pick apart and love along the way can help them start to kind of become more motivated, become engaged, and know that something throughout the week or semester is going to be fun for them, engaging for them, and motivating for them within PE. So that's my summary. And I know that you've done a lot of the talking tonight on all the different tips and tricks that we've broken down. I'm going to open it up to questions, but before we do, anything else that you want to just kind of put your stamp on in terms of key takeaways, or anything that you found over the last few years in terms of motivating your students?
Don't keep yourself on such a high pedestal, and be willing to bring yourself down a little bit to their level, and just to get to know them in a silly way. I think it goes a long way in terms of kind of gaining their respect. It doesn't mean that you have to take away any sort of discipline or structure to your classroom. It just means that you're making yourself more human to them. Sure. And I think that's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things I heard early on in my coaching career and working with students at the high school level was, they don't all have to be your best friend, nor should they, but they all should want to, work hard for you and see you as a human and a human being. So I think that's a really good point. So with that, I've seen a few questions come through. So Molly, I'll throw them your way. Just a quick pause though, if anybody does need to take off, we will be sending out the full recording as well as the slides and some additional information if you want it or need it after the fact. So please feel free to reach out on that level. And if you did make it this far and you need a certificate of attendance for your records or anything else like that, when I do send out the email, please let me know and I can get that over to you as well. First question here, there was one of the top ones, was what you do when students don't change out. Do you still let kids participate, or how do you handle sort of that situation? As you said, you have a lot of students that maybe don't have clothes or don't have the resources to be able to do things. How do you handle students that might not dress out?
So I do let them still participate. A lot of times, to be honest, the students who I have who aren't changing, I have two groups. I have the group that wears jeans, or I have the group who are already wearing sweats of some sort. I'm still going to be all right. Well, you're still going to work, because my overall goal is I want them to move. Sure. Right. It may be the only hour throughout the day that they are doing any sort of moving. So yeah, well, you chose to wear jeans today, and most of them it is also a choice, because I also would be like, do you want me to go get you shorts? And they'll say no, and I'm like, okay, can you still move in that? Yeah, okay, then we're good. So yes, I do still let them participate. I am a very sarcastic human, so And once I do form that relationship, like I had a student today, he walked in and I said, oh, thank you so much for changing today. I appreciate it. And he kind of gave me that look. He goes, I'm sorry, I forgot him at home. And so he knows then, like, hey, I'm watching, like, make sure you're changing. So I know I should probably tone down on some of my humor and sarcasm, but I do use it to my benefit when I can and have the relationship with the kid.
Sure. Awesome. This is a specific one, but I think probably worth explaining. Was asking to explain the med ball tic-tac-toe, because it does sound fun, but can you just break that down quickly for what it actually looks like within class?
Yeah, for sure. And if I don't do a good enough description, feel free to YouTube it. I'm sure it will pop up. But you have, say, a giant tic-tac-toe board, probably about 20 feet away from where you have two teams set up. Those two teams only get 3. I use medicine balls, and I luckily have like 3 different kinds. So I have 3 larger medicine balls and 3 multicolored medicine balls. And what I do is I have them one at a time, relay style. They have to run and place their item on the board of tic-tac-toe. And once they run back, they tag the hand of the next person. That person then runs out and places theirs. Once a ball is placed in that particular square, the square is owned. It can't be moved. But because they only have 3, you might get to a situation where all 6 balls are out on the tic-tac-toe board, but there's still no tic-tac-toe. So we don't stop the game. What happens is that relay is still going, and they're moving the tic-tac-toe balls to hopefully try and get it. And it ends up being a race to who can move and get back to their relay to have the next person go as quick as possible. And there's different things you can do, like they have to do, say, a couple air squats before they run and place their ball. You can incorporate any sort of movement that you want, but it gets pretty exciting. We've also had where we've done like cup stacking competitions before they're allowed to go and place theirs. So you can add any sort of movement or activity for them to be able to go and place that ball. So I'm really sorry, that's like a SparkNote version.
No, that was a good explanation. And I think what's fun is that tic-tac-toe has become popular in PE, not even if you don't have med balls. Like you can do it with handkerchiefs or different things like that, where you only basically get 3 and it becomes a relay race. So I think that was a perfect one as well. Other questions that have come through, we've already answered the one about dressing out and how you handle that. We've talked about med balls and the tic-tac-toe. Another question that I saw come through, Molly, was just in terms of when you mentioned some of the younger students that might be intimidated or like you're not quite sure. I think one of the things that often helps is also what you offer up in terms of programming. You spent a good amount of time talking about weightlifting and things like that, but how do you work with some of those younger students that might be intimidated by like barbells and some of the weightlifting stuff so that you can kind of ease them in so that it's not like all of a sudden day one, they're like wide-eyed within the weight room?
Yeah, so I probably take it slower than a lot of people would like. I am working with the calisthenics aspect for a while. So within platform, if you are familiar, I'm starting them with the intro to fitness or intro to weight training, just to get them familiar with their body so that they know how to move properly. I am a big component of being understanding your body and understanding how your body moves prior to progressing you into other things. And for example, my female classes, I have 2 women's fitness classes, and they are just now starting to really get into the weight room. And some of them are not comfortable underneath a barbell. And because of what we've taught them up until now, some of them, say for a squatting motion, for a back squat or a front squat, they don't feel comfortable under a barbell, but they have an air squat down. What I will do, I'll say, you guys can grab a medicine ball or a dumbbell and do a goblet squat. So they're still getting a little bit more resistance, but we've progressed them up. And then if they start to feel more comfortable and be like, okay, because a lot of them are, man, 45 pounds is a lot or whatever it may be. They see all these other people doing heavy weights that they think they have to do that as well. Absolutely not. Being a demo and showing them those progressions and working them through those progressions is super important.
Awesome. And one more question came through as you were talking about that, and then we'll wrap up here. But do you have same-sex gender classes? You've spent some time on previous webinars talking about it, but maybe you can talk just briefly about how you set up your women in fitness class to kind of create a different space for some of your female students to get a chance to try out different things.
Yes, I love this topic because it was a huge issue. We just weren't getting a lot of females within our phys ed classes. And that was a problem for me. I didn't enjoy that. I wanted more females within our class, but they were finding any way to get out of PE that they could. So I knew it was an issue. So about 6 years ago, I developed a class called Women's Fitness. It is all females. And I know that, there's some scenarios I could get into in terms of the issues that could come with that. Luckily, we as a school district have not had any sort of issues. But what's happening is they are coming into that class and they're feeling more or less like a little family. They aren't intimidated with each other. They tend to open up a little bit more, and we're starting them with activities that are more traditionally female-based, such as yoga, Pilates, dance, high-intensity interval training, and then progressing them into the weight room, which can a lot of times be a little bit more intimidating for them. Whereas my other classes I teach, which are foundations of weight training and strength and conditioning, are primarily males, not because the females are choosing not to do it, but because that's just how most of our PE classes are. Unfortunately, that's who takes them. And I do have females within those classes, and they are 100% welcomed. And a lot of times what happens is those women's fitness students will then end up wanting to take a foundations of weight training or a strength and conditioning, as it is a prerequisite if you want to do strength and conditioning. So they get the confidence in women's fitness to then be like, I can do this, and then go over into the primarily weight training classes. But then also too, my boys don't get out of things. I start them in the calisthenics in the weight room, and then by the end of the year, they're doing yoga, Pilates, dance, as well as obviously high intensity interval training. So I just flip it. Whereas those males, they want to be in the weight room first, and they feel confident there for the most part, but they don't feel so confident with dancing. And I will get them all to dance by the end of the year by just reversing that little bit of psychology.
Yeah, absolutely. And you actually did a full webinar on that. So if anybody's interested in that one, I'm happy to send that to you directly so that you can check that out, because I think it does give a good breakdown as to the approach and some of the results you've seen in terms of just overall participation and everything else like that. So with that, we're going to go ahead and just wrap up to be mindful of everybody's time. And with that, I have my contact information as well as platforms contact information up on the screen. If you want to get in contact with Molly directly, just please feel free to email me first with whatever question that you have. And then if I can't answer it, because it is specific to Molly's classes or anything else like that, I can forward you along to Molly if we haven't done an article with Molly about it, or a podcast or a webinar. So one way or another, we'll get you some stuff that hopefully will provide you those resources that will help you out as best as you can. So with that, we'll go ahead and pause here. As we talked about at the front end of tonight's presentation, motivating students is certainly not as simple as just putting together some slides. It takes trials and tribulations, and Molly goes through those on a consistent basis as well. So if you have any ideas or things you want to share with us, or have different thoughts or things along the way, again, please feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to chat and hear more from you with any questions, comments, or ideas that you have. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thanks again, and just be patient with us as we get out the recording and everything, as it does take a little bit of time to download and upload to YouTube. So thanks everyone. Have a great night. And thank you in particular to Molly for joining us and taking an hour out of her day to break things down and share some insights.
Thank you so much, guys. I enjoy, and I would love to hear any comments you guys have.